All right. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. This is Tobias Bennett here from the LMC. Very excited to have you with us to take your first look, or if not your first look, another look at our newest partner, Admiral. We've got Dan and Tima on the line. They're going to be going through quite a bit about the offering. And, you know, this is a process for the LMC that started over a year and a half ago. We looked at just about everybody in this space and took quite a bit of time to come to this conclusion. So it was not made lightly. The ease and speed of the one-tag implementation and the results for their relatively dev-light implementation really spoke for itself and are what brought Admiral to the fore. And as we usually do, we try to look beyond just that first product that everybody knows. And we see in Dan and company's work a lot of opportunity for the future in a number of areas. AdBlock is what they're known for, I think, primarily, but they're making a lot of headway in subscriptions and privacy, consent, and more. And I'm sure Dan will touch on a bit of that today. But really, they've got a comprehensive vision for visitor relationship and how to utilize that to drive long-term revenue and hopefully help us get away from some of that fly-by traffic. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Dan Rua, the CEO of Admiral. Dan, thanks for joining us today. Really excited to see what you've got to say.
Super. Thanks so much, Toby. This has been a long time coming, and we're really excited about the partnership. I'm going to step through here. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It looks like we got a full house, so this is pretty exciting. Our agenda today, I'm going to take you through some background on Admiral. I'm going to talk you through what is this thing we call visitor relationship management, which is more than a product. It's really a mindset of how you think about your visitors and revenue. 3, we're going to talk about how we specifically grow relationships and revenue. We'll go through a bunch of Admiral customer results, which is always nice to see actual results. And then David Rowley's been really great to us as a customer, and then also has agreed to join us for a Q&A about halfway through this presentation. Large local media publisher that's been a good partner for us. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with what is the LMC deal and how to get started. Along the way, if you have questions, please throw them into either the question section of GoToWebinar or the chat section, and the organizers will help us kind of coordinate that. We'll decide on the fly if we just kind of take questions as we go, or if we kind of answer them in specific spots. But when you have a question, please go ahead and throw it out there. All right, so first, some background on us, some background on myself. So I'm a computer engineer by training, worked with IBM's networking research labs for a while and got into venture capital. I did 3 venture capital funds, about 40 early stage technology companies, media publishers, software, a mix of everything. One of the last companies I backed was a very large publisher in the music space. It reached over 100 million users, was doing 1 billion plus ad impressions. And because of the overlap of music enthusiasts and early AdBlock adoption, we got to look at what was coming down the pike on AdBlock. And so when we wrapped up that company, we actually took the product team from there, spun them out to start Admiral in about 2015 to help other publishers with this topic. From a product growth standpoint, well, number one, the chart on the right just kind of shows our overall impressions across our network. So we've had some awesome growth to date. We are the leader in the AdBlock recovery category, but we weren't satisfied there because we really think there's some core issues that are much bigger than AdBlock. And therefore, we've been this pioneer of what we call visitor relationship management that we'll talk about a lot on this webinar. Customer growth, we help over 16,000 sites worldwide. Our closest competitor is a fraction of that. Very active in industry leadership. IAB, we're on multiple IAB working groups, whether it relates to ad blocking or subscriptions or privacy consent or others. Very active with Coalition for Better Ads and of course, Local Media Consortium. This slide here is just a snapshot of some of the folks that use Admiral software. A couple things I would note. We are worldwide. We are across verticals, although we have a particular strength in local media. and we are across site size. And so we help sites, as big as NBC, all the Comcast sites, all the way down mid to long tail. And what this breadth has really gotten us is an appreciation for the fact that publishers are not homogeneous. Visitors are not homogeneous, whether that visitor is an ad blocker or a subscriber or someone worried about privacy consent. They don't all think one way. They all have different value exchanges that they're open to. And that's really what's driven our VRM approach, because the idea is to meet the visitor where they're at and hopefully grow that relationship over time. So anyway, this installed base has really given us a view into the diversity of what people want. So now let's just talk visitor relationship management, or VRM kind of 101. So for us, as we mentioned, we started in the ad block recovery category, helping thousands of digital publishers size and solve their ad block losses. And we can do that for you right out of the box, get you recovering the same day that we start talking. But we really started to do some root cause analysis on what was really driving all this. And where we arrived was that for the first couple decades of the internet, publishers could get away with throwing up content, throwing up ads next to that content, and if their content was good enough, then that would build a business. But as users have taken more control over the relationship with ad blockers and privacy goals, and regulators have come with privacy as well, it's becoming more and more obvious that publishers actually need a relationship with their visitors if they're going to survive. This isn't just an eyeballs business anymore. It really is about deepening that first-party relationship. And again, this ultimately will pay off as well in fending off big tech and the platforms. In recent past, what we saw some publishers doing is what we call this kind of Frankenstein approach of different asks, different vendors, 5 to 10 different conflicting tags, asking for an email address or asking to subscribe or asking to turn off an ad blocker. And although we understand, how it started to happen, we just think it's the wrong way to go. It results in terrible UX. All these different vendors are kind of fighting over the user's attention. The vendors don't play well together, and so you're trying to figure out, how do I keep them from stepping all over each other? It creates tag and tech debt. It also creates kind of data risk. The more vendors you have, the more vendors you need to worry about data leakage. And essentially, this also kind of creates silos within organizations. And so, one silo is focused on ad ops, and another silo may be focused on subscriptions, and another silo is thinking about email. And again, without a unified approach to think about the visitor journey, everyone's stepping on each other. Therefore, we feel the future is what we call this horizontal visitor relationship management, or VRM approach. One tag, one vendor, one consistent visitor experience. Now, I will note, when I say one vendor, this is aspirational. Over time, you could start using us, even if you have other vendors doing pieces of this, but over time, you have an opportunity to start to peel tags off page. Your product team will love you for that. It's rare that you're peeling tags off versus coming and asking for more tags. But ultimately, you get one visitor experience and a better visitor relationship. And the goal is to manage that visitor relationship horizontally across the visitor journey, whether that's got to do with ad block recovery, paid subscriptions, email asks, social following, privacy consent, and we'll be getting into other things, web notifications, and a mix of others. But again, do it in a consistent way across the visitor and in a way that maximizes ARPU. So ultimately, we believe relationships equal revenue. And we haven't heard a ton of people put it this succinctly. It is about relationships. And the more you have those first-party relationships, first-party data, you have a sustainable opportunity with those visitors and with your business. Visually, here's a kind of a simple way to think about the platform. So one tag, consistent UX that we've talked about. You can start with our revenue analytics tag. As you'll hear later with the LMC terms, you get that for free, and we will give you some revenue analytics on what revenue potential we could unlock for you. Then we've got this relationship manager that really coordinates segments and targeting in a comprehensive way so that you actually can coordinate what it is you may want to ask or do with your visitors, what sort of experiences you want for your visitors. That may have to do with ad block recovery, whitelist or reinsertion-based ad block recovery. It may have to do with subscriptions or memberships. It may have to do with an email ask or social, and then ultimately may have to do with privacy consent with GDPR, CCPA, and whatever we ultimately get in the U.S. Nationally. And if you do all this right, if you do it all well, and with the help of our customer love team, that is how you get to maximum ARPU. Yield optimization isn't just a practice in ad ops. It is a practice well beyond ad ops, where you can grow ARPU step by step as you grow relationship. Someone comes to you with zero relationship, first-time visitor ad blocker on, they're worth essentially zero ARPU to you as a publisher. But if you can get them to take one extra step, maybe turn off their blocker, maybe become an email subscriber, you start to move them up on ARPU, and ultimately you can get to maximum ARPU across your entire base. So now I'm going to walk through some specific examples just so you can see some visuals. I'm not going to go into a deep dive. Of course, we'd be happy to do demos for each one of you individually and show you dashboards and all that sort of stuff. This is just some quick snapshots so you see what's possible. So with the VRM platform, we can do whitelist-based recovery. And so with this, we do detection, better detection than anyone in the category. We actually have instructions on how to get people whitelisting across 17 different blockers, which is more than anyone else. We also have this need help contact support down in the bottom right corner. We're the only player in the category that does this. We take all the contact support stuff off your plate because plenty of blockers, they don't know how to use their ad blocker. Someone else installed it, and our team has wizards and support set up to help them whitelist and ultimately get you the most revenue. When someone whitelists, that is when you get maximum CPM recovery. It unlocks your entire stack. It unlocks your mobile inventory, your video inventory, everything, so you get the most results. And so ultimately on this one, NBC News, we're now recovering $1 million plus in revenue for them just by doing this piece of VRM. Another piece of VRM, ad light recovery, or sometimes called ad reinsertion. Now we are very big on, because we believe in the visitor relationship, we're very big on consent-based relationships. So this is not what we call surprise ad reinsertion, where you just try to jam ads past blockers. This is a set of blockers in the world, 300 million, that have already said they're okay with acceptable or ad light experiences. And with our same single tag, you can flick on ad light experiences. And as you can see here in the top right is an example on Board Panda. Ad blocker is active, but ad is still there. It's typically a lighter ad, flatter ad. You're not going to get the same CPMs that you get via whitelisting, but it does allow you to monetize more of your visitors. We have the ability to do the combo of whitelisting and reinsertion, and so far with Board Panda, we're doing 70K plus recovery for them. One thing we saw from the ad block side is that we saw that there's a set of people that love ad-free so much that they will do something for it or they will pay something for it. And so we started to offer other value exchanges, and we realized that this ad-free experience can actually become a reward system to grow that visitor relationship. And so this is an example of social subscriptions. So in this case, it's saying, please whitelist us or subscribe or follow us on Twitter. To be clear, we can take this to any visitor. It doesn't have to be an ad block visitor. But it drives social follows, and it uses an ad-free experience in this case to actually incentivize that, and so you can juice social follows. In this case, they've grown 1,000 plus Twitter followers with us already. Likewise with email subscriptions. A lot of you are probably doing email subscriptions already, and you're probably typically just kind of asking, hey, please subscribe to our newsletter to get updates. There's not an incentive system there. It's typically kind of a begging ask, whereas with this, we have the ability to do incentivized or non-incentivized, but we really do like the incentivized because, again, that can drive email subscribers as well for you. In this case, Astrology has grown 6,000 plus email subscribers. And if it's not obvious already, what you're seeing here is kind of a consistency of look and feel that you can use to make sure you're getting a consistent UX for your visitors. Another step for the VRM platform is privacy consent. This one actually came to us. We were very active with IAB on building the transparency and consent framework. We were already engaging visitors for a mix of other reasons. So the idea of engaging them on privacy consent was a natural. In fact, from a visitor relationship standpoint, those privacy consent choices are really at the heart of the relationship between a visitor and a publisher. And so we drive that, for UPI, we drove GDPR compliance to them so they could allow EU traffic. I'm sure a lot of you, particularly in the local media category, a lot of folks have just turned off EU traffic until they get this figured out, and so we can unlock that for you as well. We're also the only privacy consent platform that essentially pays as well, because you have the ability to flick on the rest of our revenue opportunities. So even if you were to take a hit because some set of users are saying no to consent, you have the ability to make up for that hit with other revenue opportunities. And then we get to subscriptions and memberships. As I mentioned, there's a set of people that will pay for either ad-free experiences or premium content or what have you. In this case, WRAL, Capital Broadcasting, wanted to try memberships. They had been thinking about it for 6 months. When we came in, we were already starting to recover revenue for them with AdBlock, and they said, hey, listen, can you turn on memberships for us? And we said, we can do that in 24 hours. So we turned it on. We're doing introductory pricing. We're doing annual pricing and monthly pricing for them. This is a visual of some of the results and reporting you can get. So this is an example of we've achieved 75% AdBlock reduction. So you can see when we showed up, they're around 20% AdBlock rate. We've now driven the red line down to roughly 5%. We've also driven memberships, as I said. As a matter of fact, the relationship was so good that the president of the company, Jimmy Goodman from Capital Broadcasting, liked us, liked our results, liked the VRM vision. They actually ended up becoming a strategic investor in Admiral. And then we also, one of the only players in the category that offer multi-site subscriptions. So if you have a network of sites, and instead of selling an individual site, you might like to sell a bundle subscription across all of those sites, which can get you network effects of everyone driving into the same bundle and allow you to possibly price that bundle a little bit higher. We can power that for you. And so Raw Story has done that. They actually have 3 sites in the political category that we bring together in a single bundle. Again, introductory pricing, monthly pricing, and annual. Is it, again, another look at the combination of AdBlock and getting into subscriptions with them. We've now achieved 76% recovery for them, 500K plus a year. And the CEO there has told us that it's simply revolutionized his business. Subscriptions are now a core strategic revenue driver for them that they're planning long term. All right. Well, this is the part I was excited to get to. So David has been just really a fantastic customer of ours. I'm going to let him give a little introduction of himself and AdvanceLocal. But so David, if you could maybe start there, can you share with everyone a little background on AdvanceLocal and kind of relevance to this webinar?
Yeah, for sure. So for all that may not know, AdvanceLocal is one of the largest media groups in the U.S. We operate leading news and information companies in more than 20 cities across the U.S., reaching more than 50 million uniques on a monthly basis. What that looks like in reality is we've got about 9 local media groups across the country in major areas like Portland, Oregon, with the Oregonian and OregonLive.com. Several papers across Michigan, as well as MLive.com. And then about 7 or 8 newspapers in New Jersey, which roll up to the digital site NJ.com. So we're in a lot of various pockets across the U.S., but we also do have a national presence based on all of the other people that are accessing that content. We hold the #1 position in all of our markets, which means that our brands are very, and we focus on this in our mission and our core values. We're deeply rooted in the communities that we serve, and corollary to that, we're also best positioned to create deep relationships with both our users and consumers in those communities. So from an advertising perspective, which is the side of the business that I sit on, we're very focused on providing a full service approach to our clients' marketing needs. So it's not just display, it's not just video, but really providing everything in the life cycle of a campaign. So whether a client of ours, whether that's a mom and pop, an SMB, a more regional player, We provide web dev, SEO, campaign strategy, any kind of advertising on our owned and operated sites, anything outside of our sites through extended reach partners, and a lot around reporting and analytics. So a lot of breadth and a lot of depth to what we do. A little bit more about me. I work on the customer success team, which is a rebranding of our ad ops and client services groups, which is a centralized group. We support all of our local media groups and other teams really from an ad operations and an advertising technology perspective. So we're in effect the ad product experts. We handle all of the campaign fulfillment, all of the ad campaigns that come in from our various groups across the country. And we also have teams that optimize those campaigns and report back on them for success. Besides the day-to-day with on the advertising side, I also work very closely with product teams, the content team, the consumer revenue teams to make sure that any changes to our sites and anything that would be seen by a user is done in a coordinated and collaborative manner.
Super. Great intro. I would not have done it justice. So let's talk about, I guess, your finding of Admiral and or choosing Admiral. Give us some color on that. Where were you on any of these, ad block or revenue topics, and why did you choose Admiral?
Yeah, definitely. So we've had our toes in the ad blocking space for quite a while. So I guess it was back in late 2015, early 2016, where kind of the ad blockopolis or whatever you want, blocklips, whatever you want to call it, was coming around, and it was the only thing that was leading in all of the industry sites and magazines at that point. At that point, we really focused and formed a task force to review what our approach should be, how should we react as a company. And that task force, which was the right thing to do at the time, was a combination of ad operations, of product, of consumer revenue, revenue strategy, our UX team. So it was a really cross-department collaboration, which made all the sense in the world. At that point, we agreed that we needed to do something and work with a vendor that in order to understand what the impact of ad blocking was on our sites and be able to respond to that from a messaging standpoint, and being able to get the word out to our ad block users that our local journalism and our award-winning journalism is supported by advertising, and we need you to whitelist. So we worked with another vendor in the space for these last couple of years, testing various strategies, messages, different types of creative, different types of messaging cadences. And what we were finding overall is that the whitelist rates and the incremental revenue that was coming from users that eventually whitelisted was subpar. It was never really substantial enough to put in the amount of work that we were. So at the beginning of, I would say probably late 2018, early 19, we thought about looking outside, doing a vendor audit, and really just time and time again, just through the industry and my peers in the industry, the Admiral just kept on coming up again and again and again. So we brought them in, we talked to them, and we're really just kind of blown away with their approach. And I think a lot of it just comes from just the amount of people that they have on the product engineering side, their work in the music space, and how it was applicable to the ad industry as well, and to media. We eventually went with Admiral, mainly for those reasons, plus the ability to transition quickly from one vendor to the next. They were very early on sharing insights about how we could improve our whitelist rates. They pretty much just opened up the kimono very quickly and showed us what we could be doing better. And also, even though we're only doing the ad blocking side with Admiral right now, we were at the initial onset very impressed with the full product suite, like Dan had mentioned, around their VRM platform. And last but not least, I think just the focus on customer support. So, as I had mentioned a couple of years ago, we internally branded our group as customer success, and we thought that was really cool at the time. But clearly, Dan and the Admiral team out-customered us and called themselves Customer Love, which again, we can't, can't take anything away from that. But I mean, to be frank, to be fair, their customer support has been, and we can talk about this during the next question, has been really phenomenal.
Terrific. Thanks, David. So let's talk about that. So how was the rollout? I like to tout all this one tag stuff and what have you. And to be honest, when we're talking to publishers, a lot of times I think they roll their eyes at us because everyone claims ease of deployment, and then it always turns into a 3-month deployment. So can you just talk about the rollout?
Yeah, definitely. So even going back a little bit, one of your earlier slides was talking about the Frankenstein and all of the things on the back end that we ask our various product teams to upload. Is just another little piece of JavaScript. Over the last, I'd say, 2 years, we've been very focused on UX and trying to improve everything that we can in order to make our sites and the content the most compelling thing possible. And that includes, obviously, tech bloat, tag bloat, and having fast and high performance sites. So we've been really pushed from multiple parties across the company to get rid of our tag bloat. And so we've done that in several ways, which just, again, highlights the fact that the Admiral team and their approach to this and having the one tag approach that really powers everything, whether you're using one piece of it or several components to it, is really a really nice approach. So that we were sold on from day one. But to talk about the rollout specifically, it was super quick. So even from signature to being ready to go live, I think it took maybe a week and a half. So it was really, really, really quick. And again, oftentimes, these kind of projects get slowed up because usually it's not because of the vendor, but because of the publisher. So we were good on our side. Admiral was very good on their side, and we were able to get up and live very quickly. So again, going back to the customer love approach, we were our customer love guy, Brian, has been phenomenal. He was always available for calls, always quick responses to emails, always willing to jump on a screen share super quickly, not just even on weekdays, but also I think a few weekends. So again, just wonderful, quick rollout.
Fantastic. All right. So, and then the money question, I'm sure a lot of pubs are curious about. So how have we performed? Have you been happy with it? Do you have any numbers around it you can share?
Yeah, very happy. So again, numbers are always going to be relative to the size of the publisher. So given that we are pretty big, the revenue will be big. I mean, you had mentioned that NBC has already seen $1 million. We went live on June 1, and from that day forward through basically almost the end of August, we've seen about $150K worth of recovered revenue. So this is revenue coming from people who have been messaged and told to whitelist and disable their ad blocker, becoming users that are now looking at advertising again. And that is true incremental revenue that we weren't getting any time before this. So a lot of money out of the gate, and definitely way higher than the previous vendor. So if you fast forward that and assume, on an annualized rate, that 150 turns into 600. So that is definitely not something to sneeze at. So we're really looking forward to to having that money available. When we saw the first months of recovered revenue, myself was freaked out in a good way. But also our leadership and our executives were very pleased with it, again, because it's very light lift, minimal lift on our side. A lot of the work is done on the Admiral side. So it's really just almost found money effectively. And then the other thing which I thought was very interesting, and Dan mentioned ARPU, the average revenue per user metric, which again, I think more publishers need to think about. It was something that was on our radar, and we started to pay a little bit more attention to it. But what's interesting is that, from the recovered visitors, we're seeing the ARPU of them being 40 to 50% higher than the ARPU of non-blockers, which just shows you, because a lot of users don't even realize that they have an ad blocker on. Once you put a message in front of them that says that, you are getting access to this award-winning journalism, this local journalism that you can't find anywhere else, it's advertising that supports that. It really kind of tugs at the heartstrings a bit and makes them realize, okay, I do need to support this. And I think based on that, once they do whitelist, you start seeing more engaged end users.
Super. Yeah, a couple bits of color I'd share on that. We've seen that across our entire network, that users who we can recover just consume at a higher rate than the average visitor. These ad block visitors, they are tech savvy, they are internet savvy, they're rabid readers, and so the ability to unlock them, you're not unlocking an average visitor, you're unlocking someone that's actually better than average, which is pretty exciting from an ARPU standpoint. The other thing I'd note is that the approach that we've taken, and there's a picture of it kind of down here in the bottom right, we didn't even do the hardest ask. And so when we talk about these revenue numbers, this wasn't a hard ask. This is something that we call smart engage, which kind of intelligently early on in the relationship kind of gives an easy out for people if they don't want to turn their ad blocker off. But then every now and then, if they've now consumed your content many times without compensating you, it'll give them an extra nudge where they actually have to turn off their ad blocker. And by doing that kind of intelligent engagement, that alone can double recovery rates versus if you just kind of always gave people the out. So anyway, a couple interesting tidbits. And I guess, the money question for us, would you recommend Admiral? Any lessons learned or guidance for others on this call?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, the short answer is definitely yes. Major recommendation. One, because I think it's just one tag, super easy implementation. So the fact that it's one tag, the fact that you've got great customer support, it was just a super easy implementation. Again, like I had mentioned, the Admiral team, the customer love team specifically, was really helpful every step of the way. So, and doing a bulk of the work, creating the messages, providing best practices around what we should be messaging users. And then just once you're live, just the day-to-day support and helping you understand the revenue that you're recovering and if there's any additional things that you should be doing, in the next month or future months. And also too, again, just like in comparison from Admiral to our previous customer or previous vendor, the whitelist rates are night and day, and they make you as a publisher or you as the person who's responsible for ad blocking look like you made a wonderful choice. And because they do a lot of the work, you can still internally take all the credit with your boss or your executives or whomever. So one last thing that I would point out is that we always prefer to work with vendors that feel like a part of your team and are willing to not I guess put skin in the game, not in any kind of revenue or monetary way, but really put their neck out and feel like they are in it with you. And just the level of trust I've seen and the level of support I've seen so far from the Admiral team, I would definitely recommend that, because they really do feel like they're on your team.
Wow. Thank you, David. Fantastic. Any last questions for David before we kind of just start to wrap up with next steps? And any questions for David or Advance?
We have a question that came in from Stephanie Moulet from Salt Lake, and the question is, how do you handle sites that have a paywall and have different rules for ads for subscribers versus non-subscribers? For example, we do not allow non-subscribers to read content that have an ad blocker on, while subscribers that pay for content have no restrictions to use an ad blocker and use that as an additional perk to buy a subscription.
Yep. So there's kind of two ways we go at that. One way is just by integrating in with what your existing subscription system is. And so understanding the logged in state of someone, and our targeting engine can avoid people, say that's a subscriber who already paid to keep their ad blocker, that sort of thing. So our targeting engine kind of takes that into account, subscriber state. And then the other option is if a publisher wants to start kind of moving towards a one tag mentality, we can actually end up replacing your subscription solution. And then with that, there's even more kind of coordination opportunities between the modules. All right, so last couple slides here. So, we do so much, the platform does so much, that we often have publishers get really excited about all the things they can do with it. And they bring together everyone for, they want to have a 3 to 6 month task force on building the Mac Daddy solution. I would just share that, since you are losing impressions every single day, our approach is kind of this 3-step approach. It is step 1, install the free measure tag, get some data on the problem. They can inform it for yourself. They can inform for the rest of your team. And it gives us data that we can then come back to you with recovery projections to get you more data. Step 2, start recovering quickly with Smart Engage. So as David mentioned, our customer love team, Brian and his team are just phenomenal. And they could get you recovering the exact same day that you install our tag if you were interested. And you just start collecting. You start collecting users, you start collecting revenue, particularly as we're heading into Q4. The more blockers you could unlock here in Q3 are going to pay off in those Q4 CPMs. And so go ahead and just start engaging, and we will do that in a professional way that gets you revenue and treats your users right. And then 3, we will work with you as a partner, as David mentioned, to figure out how we want to optimize this, right? Do we want to do some special segmentation with your subscriptions? Do we want to add in email collection or some other things to really optimize this? Our segmentation engine, one of the reasons we blow away others is because others are just kind of like throwing up a message. They don't really have a segmentation and targeting engine behind what they're doing. And so that would be step 3. And that's where we can really start to run together. But again, if you spend 3 to 6 months trying to plan out that perfect solution, but you lose revenue during that 3 to 6 months, that's a missed opportunity. So now let's talk about what LMC did in beating us up for your benefit as an LMC member. So number 1, you get the free measure revenue analytics, and as we work more with LMC, we're going to come up with some LMC member benchmarking and the opportunity to compare yourself against benchmarking and just understand how you're doing versus peers. 2 is 100% performance pricing with 0 risk. You even get a revenue recovery free trial as an LMC member. Discounts grow as LMC member adoption grows. So we have tiers of discount based off of how many LMC members come on. And so, the sooner you come on, the better. But then as more LMC members come on, you will gain extra benefit and so and extra discounts. It's simple to adopt. So LMC has already done the legal negotiation, built-in SLA, a mix of different things. Again, beat us up pretty bad in the process. Toby's a good guy, but a tough guy. And ultimately, it leads to a simple member adopting addendum. If you've done this already for other LMC partners, it's very simple to come on board. And then lastly, there's a maximum kind of early bird discount for signing before a deadline that we put out there. And we're going to send an email out to everyone post-webinar giving you more details on that, but you can really get maximum discount if we get rolling. Again, we're very mindful, as a partner of yours, we're very mindful of that Q4 and getting you as many recovered visitors before Q4 gets here so you can then maximize those Q4 CPM. So that's all we've got. It was a lot. I hope it makes sense. I hope the VRM story makes sense. I'm going to pause here. Again, we've got time for follow-up questions. Of course, we can always do one-on-ones together, but if there's a question you'd like to put out, please do now. And as I mentioned, we are going to send, after this webinar, an email out to everyone with a link so you can actually schedule with us, either with you individually or if you want to bring other members of your team to think about this kind of horizontal approach to visitors, and we'd be happy to sit down and talk through those items.
Also, for those of you who are familiar with the member shared area drive, Google Drive member shared area, we're going to be putting up the recording and the deck if you want to take some additional time to look through what was presented here today as well. And it'll have all the information on there as well to reach out to Dan.
Yeah, this is David. If there aren't any questions, I'd love to get on a soapbox for a second.
Works for me.
All right. So last week I was attending the AdvanceLocal Publisher Forum in Vancouver, and I did a session on how publishers can use service as a differentiator, and that service came in two forms, from publisher to serving your advertising clients, and also as a publisher serving your users, your consumers, the people that are reading your content day in, day out. And then on that user, on that consumer side, one of the challenges that I put out to publishers was to almost, think of yourself as a direct consumer brand, which in effect we are. But, there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of years about these new DTC brands that are coming up, and you've all seen them, you've all interacted with them. Many of the things that they do, they're obsessed about a lot of things, obsessed about user experience, the user journey, and also creating a community around their brand with their users. Data collection, all of that. They're just obsessed with all of it and turning it into the best product and the best experience ever. So the way, and I see that as a huge opportunity for publishers, including ourselves. We're at the early stages of trying to do better with user experience and to do better of having a two-way dialogue between our users. And I think, a VRM approach, whether it's with Admiral or anybody else, it's something that publishers really need to focus on in order to stay competitive. All right, soapbox off.
Dave, I think that's an interesting observation. One of the things we've thought about as we came along with VRM is that, if you were building a B2B or e-commerce company, you wouldn't even think of doing that without a marketing automation platform to help you engage those users, put kind of the right offer in front of the right person at the right time. And there isn't really a HubSpot for media publishers today. And so in a lot of ways, even though, we have all these buzzwords in VRM, in a simplistic way, it's just marketing automation for media publishers, right? Stop thinking in silos of ad ops and in subscription and in email, but instead it's like, when that visitor comes, what is the journey? What is it we want to do to help grow the relationship? It's not necessarily ask for a subscription on visit 5, right? It's something to grow that relationship before you maybe ultimately ask to get married, that moves them along, grows ARPU, and maybe they'll get married, maybe they won't get married, but you're at least, automating the process of how you grow the relationship. All right, I really want to thank everyone for joining us. Our team will follow up with everyone. Our customer love team will make sure that we spread the love. It's done well for David, and so we're going to make sure we do it for all the LMC members. If I can answer any questions, my email is here, dan@getadmiral.com. Feel free to email me directly. My phone number is there. Feel free to call me or text me directly. We are all bought in on LMC. Toby, we've spent a lot of time together, and we want to help the entire network do better. So thanks, everyone.